Welcome to the Lab of Life podcast. I'm your co-host, Raluca, energy healer, intuitive, homeopath, and inner voice guide.
And I'm Lena, scientific mystic and metapsychologist. We're here to explore spirituality, ancient wisdom, and cutting-edge science to optimize our human experience.
Life is complex, and we're here to simplify it for you by sharing practical insights and strategies that will inspire and empower you to unlock your full potential. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lab of Life podcast. In today's episode, we explore what it means to master life with our incredible guest, Sam Kabert. We talk about his personal journey and specifically discuss the significance of maintaining soul-life balance, especially if you are a successful entrepreneur who is very ambitious and driven. We explore topics like dark night of the soul, plant medicine and psychedelics, the importance of intention in plant medicine ceremonies, and the profound impact of integration practices in psychedelic healing journeys or any type of healing journeys, actually. Sam provides invaluable wisdom and shares many useful tools to help us navigate our human experience more smoothly. Let's get started. Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. I'm so excited to have you. I met Sam when I had my first Bufo experience, and I remember I was being so nervous. Before that, we had like a short phone call, but as soon as you opened the door, your energy felt so comforting and so grounding. Like I immediately relaxed. Like it was just like, oh, yeah, I'm safe. I'm safe here. And then when I got your book and I read through the book and I realized that we're sort of like on the same journey and all the tools that you accumulated, from that point on, I'm like, he has to be on the podcast eventually, whenever we're ready for him.
Yeah, and in your book, you shared about your journey from working in the Silicon Valley and having multiple businesses to having a spiritual awakening and moving into this spiritual path of work as well. So you did introduce your story there, but will you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and how you got here for our listeners? And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And such a warm introduction. Thank you, Lena. I appreciate it. Everything you said and just opening the door. That's awesome. So happy to hear from you. Yeah. So my journey, the short version is I'm from the Silicon Valley area. I started a business up in Northern California, came back home. Took me a while to grow the business. When I finally hit $1 million in sales, I was also was named to Silicon Valley's 40 under 40 list that year. I wrote my first 3 books in less than a year. I was chair of a young professionals group, a board on a couple nonprofits, a board member on a couple nonprofits. We had just wrapped up our 4th annual pitch tank event at eBay's headquarters, which is a Shark Tank inspired event for startups. And around that time in February, March of 2019, I was going through a numbing depression with sleepless nights. And it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I was into meditation for maybe about a year, but I wouldn't consider myself a very mindful person, let alone spiritual. Grew up Jewish more than anything, didn't really resonate with organized religion, nothing against my religion, but just organized religion. Always felt spiritual, but didn't even know that was like an option. So during this numbing depression of February 2019 or so, breathwork journey found me. I felt completely reborn after the breathwork journey. I was set to do ayahuasca for the first time with the facilitators of the breathwork journey. And the breathwork journey alone was so profound that I almost considered not doing the ayahuasca journey, but I did. And that first night of Aya was everything that I had been told in terms of like, what do people say, 12 or 16 years of therapy packed into a single night. It showed me everything. I got to a place of it's all so simple, just saying that over and over again in my mind. And it's funny how like a lot of people say that now and being like, I don't remember ever hearing that before. Like, I don't think it was even like planted in my subconscious for that to come through. And it just goes to show the interconnectedness of all things, right? So anyways, after that I journey, I changed everything in my life. I got out of the toxic relationship I was in. I moved to the beach in Santa Cruz from Silicon Valley, about an hour away. Started to look at different business opportunities to get out of the business I had been in for 10 years or so at the time, almost 10 years, and changed everything. I joined Fit for Service for 2 years. I started to explore more medicines and ceremonies. I really just went down the spiritual path with blinders on. And here I am, five years later to the month right now, sitting with you two lovely ladies talking about it, right?
I know, I love it. So what do you think caused your depression? Was it a disconnect from yourself, or was the need for the awakening that caused
Mm.
the depression?
Yeah, both. That's such a great question. And I think a lot of us really got activated in 2019. And in hindsight, it made so much sense. Like in probably fall, maybe summer, fall of 2020, I started to piece it together, being like, wow, there are so many people that I'm connecting with that were just quote unquote activated last year. Like, no wonder why we were activated right before the
Yeah.
lockdowns and pandemic and all that. But so I think it was for sure like a call to arms, higher self activation, almost like in the movie Soul. If for anyone that's seen the movie Soul, where the guy's like working on the computer and they're playing with him in the astral and they just zap him and then he throws everything in the office. I'm free, right? Like I think a little bit of that, but also just like ignoring the whisper, just ignoring like, oh, I'm unhappy. Oh, like I'm focusing everything on work. And oh, I never wanted to live in Silicon Valley. I had the attitude of like coming back home to Silicon Valley as quote unquote doing my time, like it's a prison
Wow.
sentence. Yeah, because I was in a lot of ways, I was just like, I strongly dislike it here, and it's not where I wanted to be. And I did it anyways, right? For my career and everything else, which was so much out of alignment. So I would say both, and it got to a place where it was like, it couldn't be ignored anymore. And an interesting thing when I started to integrate that ayahuasca journey, that first one, April of 2019, and I got the message to move to Santa Cruz, about an hour away, the beach town. And I was having a really hard time finding a place, and it was a couple months that this went on. And then one day it just hit me. It was like, whoa, 5 years ago to the month, in June of 2014, I bought my house in Silicon Valley. And I said to myself, I'm only going to do 3 to 5 years in Silicon Valley. Then I'm going to move to Santa Cruz as a bridge move, and I'll figure it out from there. I had totally forgot about that. So, like, I had already put the intention out there. So it was almost like also being like, yeah, you said it was going to be 5 years, and you're overstaying your welcome. So hey, you gotta remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so maybe that was like a little intuition at that time that you knew you would only need 5 years there. An intuitive like.
Totally. Yeah.
And I'm curious when you said like your whole life started changing after ayahuasca and um, through that integration. How did that change feel? Were you feeling scared? Was it hard, or was it kind of like you had this focus and you knew what needed to be done now?
Yeah, it was so scary. It was so hard. For the first 2 years of my spiritual journey, I jokingly would call myself a recovering bro. you know, like I remember leaving the fantasy league I was in, and these are all my best friends from college, a fantasy football league. And I wasn't a football player or anything like that. I wasn't a meathead or a jock. I was actually a depressed metalhead in high school. But then when I went to college, I wanted to reinvent myself, and I joined the top fraternity, lived above the most popular bar in college, and repped Monster Energy drinks, an anti-hangover company. I was a rep for a spring break strip. So like I did the whole like broy meatheady type of thing. And that carried through in post-college years of fantasy football. And I was like, I don't want to join this. I don't want to do this. But then it became so competitive that like it was everything I was consuming, like the podcasts. I would listen to Sirius XM. I had a subscription to satellite radio to get edge on fantasy football because it was real time as opposed to a podcast where it would come out like a day later. And we would set alarms in the middle of the night for like 3 a.m. to like, it's called a waiver, to pick up a player. It was just extremely competitive with hundreds of messages going in our WhatsApp thread, like every single day, even in the off season. And I didn't really care about it too much other than I got caught up in the competitive nature of it. And at the time of integrating ayahuasca, I was really getting into yoga. And I noticed at a yoga studio, there was a new moon ceremony. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I looked at the description and I was like, that sounds interesting. It was a few weeks out of ayahuasca. I went and I could still hear like Mother Ayahuasca's, maybe not voice, but like hear her and feel her. And the message that kept coming through in that new moon ceremony was actually a letting go message, not a planting seed more than anything, but it's one of the same coin, just a different side. And it was to leave the fantasy football league. I was laughing to myself, being like, man, it's so trivial. Like come on, it's gotta be something else, right? But then at the same time being like, okay, I'll do it, but like, how am I going to do it? And literally my best friends, they disown me. Everything you would think, you would imagine, meathead type friends telling you, like all the names, whatever, all of the stuff. And I didn't talk with those guys for probably a year. Like, the ones that I was closer with, maybe like a couple texts here or there. Um, but yeah, I had a huge falling out and I felt very alone. I felt very lonely because I didn't know anyone that was on the medicine path and just a few people that were on the like mindfulness meditation path. So it was a very, very rough road those first 6 months before I joined Fit for Service. And then Fit for Service changed everything. It gave me that community I was so desperately seeking, and the resources to go deeper as well.
So basically, you needed to clear up your environment that wasn't serving you, and you found completely new environment and people that were your frequency was fit for service.
100%. Yeah.
So that was a necessity to like roughly be pushed out when be betrayed by your friends.
Yeah. I don't put like, yeah, I probably said the story that way. I don't look at it that way though anymore. It's how it felt, but yeah. Yeah.
I usually think and feel that if you need to move forward somewhere and we like get comfortable in our comfort zone, I do say to this to my clients, you either gonna come out of it yourself, which like we often wait till the last minute, or you're gonna be pushed out of it somehow eventually with some event. So this is like you waited until to be pushed out of it, and I'm really still struggling with that. I wait till the last possible minute until I cannot wait, I cannot feel no longer, and then I make the move. So this is definitely something I'm working on right now, that not to wait till the point that I'm pushed out of the comfort zone, but make the first step, like be brave and make the decision if something is not serving me. So how is it for you now? Do you feel that your life is a little bit more balanced, a little bit more like you can utilize the tools that you have? Like what's the difference between then when you started and now when you have all those tools and all this wisdom and yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to hear you say that, because I was thinking, oh yeah, that resonates with me. I do that as well. And to that extent, last year at the time of this recording, 2023 shaped out to be the most challenging time of my life, or at least that was the story that I told myself. and was able to let go of at a certain point. But I was in a relationship where it's always a relationship, right? But I was in a relationship where like we both knew that there are certain things that didn't like jive with the other, but everything was like happening for us. Like the whole universe was conspiring for us to be together. So it was just like, well, we should be doing this, but we both like had our reservations. And I've had a very balanced, very like chill life, yeah, since ayahuasca. And even for the most part, like I'm a Taurus, I have grounding energy, and I feel like I move at a slower pace. I feel like I'm not like just do. I like I can get that way, but for the most part, I'm not. And the woman I was seeing, we moved in together. She's at the time she had a 5 or 6 year old daughter. So I went straight into like stepdad mode and, like 0 to 100. And her energy is very much fire and like the opposite, like yin and yang, right? So it was very chaotic and it was hard to maintain balance, but we were doing a pretty good job. That said, not to get in all the details, she ended up leaving the house for a few days with her daughter. Then she sends me a text message to break up with me. And then she sends me an email because she blocked me everywhere. And it was just like a normal argument. It wasn't even anything big. And then she asked to meet in person. And then she tells me she's pregnant. And then, yeah, that was end February 27th or something, 2023. The son was the kid, the son, the boy was born in October of last
Wow.
year. I had zero communication with her that whole time, just emails. And she did everything she could to block and keep me out of that. And that is main reason. There was other reasons as well that it became such a challenging time in my life. And the Bufo actually was very helpful in me processing and medicine. I did a lot of medicine work early on. I did. And then I was able to like get to a place where it's like, okay, now I can really work with it and integrate it more. But I front loaded with some medicine. And I end up adopting a mentality of like it's game time, like let's fucking go, like what's the point of learning about the work and theorizing like all the different stuff
Mhm.
if we're not going to put it to use? So what helped me more than anything was being like excited and like looking at this like, wow, isn't this fascinating? And like when things are coming up, like really being like, okay, this is happening for me. Let me feel that this is happening for me. Let me get curious. Like, how is this happening for me though? Like, how, right?
Oh my God, I can resonate with that. So
Did you
Yeah,
find out? Did
did
you
you
find
find out?
how it was happening for you?
absolutely. I mean, I ended up getting to a point in a tapping class in, I think it was June or July. So several months later, over summer, where in this tapping class, like a few weeks going into it, I was really telling myself this story of um, like this is the hardest time in my life, right? And in that tapping class I was able to let go of that story because it was a mind fuck to me, because for a few weeks there I was like, this is the hardest time in my life, and moment to moment and day to day I feel great. So in the tapping class I was able to be like, I can let go of this story, because on like a 3D physical level, when you look at all these different things, like I also lost a revenue source and went from like a cush 5K a month that was coming into zero, that was keeping
Mm.
me afloat in a career transition. I moved out of like my happy place, my perfect home, in the perfect place to move in with this woman, and then lost that house, had to move into my parents' house for
Wow.
a few months as a 35 year, 34, whatever year old guy, like all kinds of stuff, where it was so challenging. And in that tapping class, I got to be like, okay, I can let go of this story. And it really was, Lena, you mentioned thoughts and feelings earlier. Like I just went deeper on Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I studied
Mm.
his book that I think he published in 2012 called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I found
Mhm.
more resources that had to do with that type of content. Got really into how our subconscious mind creates our reality, like on a deeper level than before. And that culminated in my newest book that's called Overcome the Overwhelm. And it's the 6-step breath process for inner peace. And I didn't set out to like be like, oh, let me alchemize this in writing a book. Like I did have a friend that planted a seed that was like, oh, like your next book should be about this. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. But when I got back from Bali after like a Kundalini training in December of last year, this January I got back, I was writing, doing what Eric Godsey talks about, and Dr. Andrew Huberman and others. It's called Pennebaker writing or expressive writing,
Yeah.
where you're writing about a traumatic event. So I was writing about that event that happened last year with this woman, the breakup, the whole thing. And through that, this book just came out of me. Like I literally wrote 50 to 75% of this book in like 2 or 3 weeks with zero writer's
Wow.
block, like just flowing out of me. And like some of the words that were coming out and some of the creative writing, I was like, I don't write like this. So
Wow.
it like wanted to be birthed. And this breath process, this 6-step breath process, like this is what I've been teaching to my clients all of last year, because it's what helped me get through it. And
Mhm.
now it's in a book. So yeah, I feel like I do understand why. I think I'm still unpacking a lot of the things as well, because, just to be straight, I'm starting to speak about this more publicly now. I think I've spoken about it a few times on podcasts, but like, I have zero communication with her to this day. Like the child, the baby doesn't even feel like mine. I have a lot of
Mhm.
guilt and shame that I've
Mhm.
needed to address with that and release. But at the same time, like I'm sitting here like ready to go when the time is, like that comes when that baby needs me, and whatever happens, or he's grown up, like I am there. I will be there. I am ready. But like for right now, it's still what, he's 4 5 months old at the time he
Wow.
was born. There's still just a lot of space needed, because this is another thing no, I won't get into that. But anyways, I'll stop talking. That's a lot, I know.
But that's in one of your latest episodes, you were talking about the dark night of the soul. I'm assuming that was the moment of the dark night of the soul. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Because I had mine last year as well, and
Mhm.
Raluca had hers
I had
last
one
year as
as
well.
well.
So we just want to compare notes. How does it feel for others? And this is not my first one, but this one was the most intense. I almost felt like I'm not going to survive it. So tell us more about like what the dark night of the soul is. And
Yeah, and it's just so interesting, the timing, like the years, like you mentioned, 2023 being really hard, and then 2019 being an awakening. And I feel like so many people, there's
in the
parallels in
same,
those
in
timelines.
exactly the same
Yeah.
space and
Very
time.
I'm
interesting.
getting chills, yeah, because it was March. Like, there's a shout out to Candace Rasa. She's my favorite and best Akashic Records channeler I've worked with. I've probably done like 10 or 12 calls with her privates over the years, and she's been on my podcast a bunch of times. I've referred a bunch of people to her. She spoke to my group, and in March of 2023, she does these monthly like Akashic Records predictions calls, and I've never joined one, but I didn't realize she did it, and for whatever reason I joined this one in March. And it was like, the week that everything went down, and I can
Mm.
remember her energy to this day of doing this Zoom type Akashic Records reading call. Like, she was speaking enthusiastically, like, March, like, this is the time when things are getting stirred up. You're going to look back 5 years from now. You're going to look back on your lifetime and be like, March of 2023. Like, that was the energy. I was
Mhm.
like, whoa, like it was just hitting me. And just
Wow.
like you both were saying, I was like, damn, like just 4 years ago, it was March of 2019. And then over
Mhm.
the next few months, it was like, whoa, like how many people are getting shaken up this year, just like
Yeah.
2019. And it blew my mind. I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now. I'm not huge in astrology, but if either of you are, or anyone listening, you'll know exactly why that is, because there's
Mhm.
so many astrological things going on. And that's another reason why a lot of us have been feeling it in late February to early April-ish
Mhm.
at the time of this recording in 2024, because there's
Mhm.
more astrological
Yeah.
stuff coming up. Now, all of 2019 totally set me up for 2023. Had I not been doing the deep work I was doing in 2019, I don't know that I would have came out of 2023 in one piece. There's
Mhm.
no possible way I would have been able to adopt a game time mentality, or this is happening for me. So
Mhm.
I'm very much grateful for all of it. Now, I totally went on a tangent there. The dark night of the soul is cyclical. You know, if you're hearing this term for the first time, it's night with an N, not a K. You know, it's not like a knight in shining armor. Dark Night of the Soul, and it's confusing because it's not a night. You know, for pretty much no one, a Dark Night of the Soul is just like a night. Usually, it's going to be a few days, a few weeks, a few months. I think if it's longer than a couple of months, then there's some deeper work that we could do to really face it head on and to surrender to it so we can get through it. But at the same time, we can't force it. It's just kind of got a timing thing. In my book, Soul Life Balance, I talk about, and when I was teaching yoga, I talk about it too, like the symbol of infinity. I
Mhm.
love the number 8. I was born
Mhm.
on May 8th, 88. So 5/8/88. So I've always had an
Wow.
infinity for 8. And if we flip the 8 on its side, we see the symbol of infinity. So when I used to teach yoga towards the beginning, you know, have them do hip circles, or now I don't even remember what it's called, figure eights, you know, when you're doing a hip circle, but make a figure eight. So I say this thing about the infinity while they're like creating an infinity with their bodies, and being like, if we look at the symbol of infinity, it's almost like a direct representation of the human experience, because we can
Yep.
see the highs and the lows, and how we always come back to meet ourselves exactly where we're at, unbroken. So now how I see the Dark Night of Souls is it's cyclical, and it's like, oh, hello darkness, my old friend. Like, now we know how to navigate it, and we need to remember that, like, even though we're feeling it this way now, like, this is going to propel us to the next level up, whatever terminology you want to use. So even though it might feel like we're lower, we're actually climbing higher each time, and it's propelling us. And if we can just like have that mentality of getting curious and game time and all of those things, and put the tools that we've been learning to use, then we can actually like get through it. And really, my good friend, also a Fit for Service alum, Nathan Kohlerman, just published his first book, and it's called Between Two Worlds. He was just on my pod a couple of weeks ago, and in his book he writes, the way out is within, because so often
Mhm.
we say the way out is through, and
Mhm.
Nathan is proposing that the way out is within. And when I read that, I was like, damn, I love that, because we could get into semantics, but I
Mhm.
think really like that through energy is almost like a resistance, and like,
Mhm.
more of the masculine of being like, okay, I need to fix this, versus like the way out is within is more of the feminine of like being with it and really
Mhm.
acceptance. So I thought that was a really great, and Nathan goes deep on shadow work and Dark Night and Soul and all
Oh,
that.
that's great. We need to check that book out
Yeah.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
I like that saying. It gives a nice feeling to it. It's like almost like you're settling deeper within it, and you're going deeper within. And
Yeah.
we yeah.
I know somebody said it recently in one of the classes, maybe you have to feel it to heal it. And I think that's exactly, it resonates with me that way too. You have to really be in it and not escape it and not try to like get out of it somehow, because that is a resistance. I actually did a breath work. I don't know if you heard about it, the Vitality. He does like this
Oh, he's
presentation.
amazing, right?
Oh my God. And he said, like, he's like, it's a 2 hour breath work, breathing for 2 hours. And then he said, like, you're going to get super tense, like somebody who is a very, like, very much a control freak and needs to control everything. You're going to get the most density. But he's like, don't try to get out of it, because it's only going to be worse. If you just wait it out and go within, it will go away. I mean, I was in it for like an hour, good hour. But yes, I understand now this concept. Like when you just in it, and you allow it to happen without any projections or like waiting for the results, it dissipates on its own when it's time.
Mm-hmm.
But how, so when you got out, because when I was in my dark night of the soul, it was like nothing makes sense. I don't even know why I'm here. I don't want to live anymore.
But we were actually talking about the Dark Night of the Soul last night, and we
Mhm.
were saying how hard it is to remember what it felt like. Now, being out of it, it's hard. You can't really remember what it really felt like. And also, when you're in the dark night of the soul, you can't fully connect with how good you can feel. So I think it's so powerful that you were able to take that pain while you were in it and create a new
A new
system.
system,
Like, you
yeah.
created, like, took the pain into purpose and you created that new system. Yeah.
Oh, so
Really
tell us,
nice.
like, how did it feel for you to be in it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm just coming out of it right
Mhm.
now where like I'd say this is April 18th, 2024, day of recording. And I think for about a month and a half of the new year, I would say from January to mid-February or so, I was on fire, feeling like being like, oh my God, like I have more energy than I've ever had before. I feel absolutely amazing. And I now for almost 2 months, I would say on and off, I've been in a dark night being like, okay, I'm in it. No, I'm not in it. I'm in it. I'm not in it. Like what's going on. And really needed to take a lot of my own advice and writing a book called Overcome the Overwhelm. Obviously I called in a lot more overwhelm because that's just like the cosmic joke of it all, right? You want to be an authority on overcoming overwhelm. All right, let's give you a little bit more to
You
really.
go deeper in the lesson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I also talk about humaning. Shout out to Celeste McQueen, and she and I, maybe she did, I don't remember at this point who coined the term, and it's neither here nor there. But we talk about humaning a lot, where it's like temporarily disengaging from your spiritual practices to just chill and be a damn human, right?
Yeah.
And where I get stuck is going too far on the humaning side. I struggle with emotional and binge eating and lying on the couch and watching movies that I know aren't good for me to watch. And I love watching movies. Like now, I probably did 2 or 3 years after 2019 when I first started like not watching any like, big films or anything like that. And now I love going back watching like these. I just watched Wonder Woman for the first time recently. I watched both of them and I was like, oh my God, it's wild that the second one is called Wonder Woman 1984, and like the whole thing is like 1984, and like the way that the programming is telling you stuff through these movies just blows my mind, like when you can see through it and see like the spiritual side of it. And that's how I justify like laying on the couch for 6 hours on end, overeating and just being in it. And then I'm like, all right, dude, like you gotta get out of this. Cause I did such a good job last year of applying Walter Bond's saying of having a pity party. This guy's a keynote speaker and he's like just a typical motivational speaker, not mindful, spiritual, or anything like that. Former national basketball player. Yet, in his speeches, he talks about having your pity party. He says, have a pity party and give yourself 3 days to have that pity party, then get out of it. And I came across him saying that last year when I needed that, and it was really helpful. And for me, it's almost like easier when I really know why I'm feeling this way because then I can address it. Whereas in the past couple of months, I haven't been able to put my finger on it. Like there's nothing specifically like quote unquote wrong. It's just like this feeling and it's been so uncomfortable. Like for me, it's actually easier knowing what the thing is because then I can address it, and it becomes harder for me to surrender to find out what the more existential overwhelm is. Because like last year there's two different types of overwhelm, right? There's internal and external. Last year was very much external overwhelm. Anyone could look at my life and be like, oh, I know exactly why Sam's struggling, right? Right. And I knew as well, obviously, because I'm going through it. This year, or at least the past 4 to 8 weeks or so, it's been like, what is going on here? This is just existential angst, and a lot of it was like, I've had these massive bursts of creative expression, and I know my human design is a manifester, and I'm aware of my energy centers, and I'm aware that I can't like overdo it because then it takes me a while to replenish. And that's kind of where I've been at, also being like, okay, you are creating a lot, you know, you need to just like chill and relax and not get so caught up in like the creation mode, and just be okay with like being in it. So it's all the stuff that like I've known, but because it's like not like a physical external thing, it makes it so much harder to surrender to that. Now that I'm finally at a point of like getting past it, I'm getting back into my ocean plunges. You know, I did very good in January and February, going to the beach every single morning, despite how cold it was, even if it was raining, unless the waves were like 10 feet big or anything, I would get in that ocean. Then it started to get colder, not colder, but it started to rain more. And then I got sick and I wasn't feeling good and all this other stuff. And I stopped going. Now that I'm consistent with going to the ocean in the morning, doing a few minutes of breath work, meditation, ocean plunge, listening to a reggae mix I made called Limitless Vibes. That's all about like subconscious reprogramming. Like some of these songs I handpicked were just like, I'll listen to and be like, whoa, yeah, that's like super deep. Put it on a playlist. I listen to that throughout the day. I have, you know, solfeggio, I think that's how you say it, music, frequency music playing right now. And like throughout the day, like these little things are what helps me. And then being more intentional with my eating as well, because that eating can really, and getting in my body. I started to go HIIT classes. So it's a variety of things, but like the past 4 or 6 weeks, like for me and for a lot of people I've been talking with, I feel like it's really been like an astrological thing where most of us are just like, I don't know, like this is we're doing my best, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I completely relate to that, with that feeling of being overwhelmed and low and not knowing the reason why. And it is really hard to surrender to it, because then you kind of get into your head about it and you're like, am I just being lazy? Is this resistance? Do I not want to move forward? Or do I actually need the rest? And it is really hard to surrender to it. But then we have to trust that, you know, the energy comes when you're ready. It is something that you're moving through. And even how you were saying, in watching, you know, movies and like TV shows that maybe are not good for you, I always find that we still find a lesson in them. Even if we're laying around all day like watching a TV show or reading a book, there's still a message in there that we need to hear.
Yeah, there's always that feeling of guilt, or that, yeah, that you're lazy, that you're not doing anything. How do you deal with it? Oh, but also I want to ask you, are you 6'2" by any chance? Or
On your
what's your
human
profile
design.
on your human design?
Oh, I should pull that up. I don't know. It's been a while since I've looked at my human design.
Yeah, because it's like
We love human
we love
design,
human
and
design.
astrology feels like it explains so much about us. It really helps us understand our
Mhm.
nature and our
And I was
patterns.
just like, because my partner he's like just started to tap into all of that, and he's still against. He's like, astrology, it's not real. Human design, he's sort of like a little bit more interested in that. But I keep telling him, like, you don't have to believe in it for it to influence you, because if enough people in society believe in it, you automatically are influenced. So might as well have all the information, and you can navigate that. So like, it exists, so you don't have to believe it, but if it's there, it's going to affect you regardless. Like Mercury retrograding right now, right? There's little things that are happening. And yeah, you can pretend that it's not going to affect me because it's not real, but it will. What do you think about that?
No, I agree so much on that. I don't really have anything more to add. I think uh, sometimes it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, whether it's human design, enneagram, or any of these different things. And I think that's something to watch out for. But they're all just tools, you know, and I think they're great, you know. Yeah, I'm a 5'2". I just looked it up.
5'2".
5'2".
Okay, so
Okay.
close to that. It's like 6'2", 5'2". They're very similar.
Yeah, so the 2 is that part where you need to go within,
Mm-hmm.
and you need your alone time and kind of to hibernate. And 5 is a leadership number. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a leadership role,
And impactful, you need to impact as many people as possible.
which you do.
Exactly. It's like your calling.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I know.
So will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now in your work? Like, what is it?
Mhm.
Besides writing a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I've been doing a lot of psychedelic integration coaching for the past year. I've kind of slowed down on that for a number of reasons. I still love to work with with clients. I don't love the struggle of like promotions and like the needy energy because it's medicine work. So I'm like,
Mhm.
when the people are ready to work with me, they'll find their way to me. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it now, as opposed to like building a traditional business out of it. It just didn't feel right. It felt amazing to build that last year and have the impact and all that. But then I started to notice like, oh, it's easy for me to slip into old entrepreneurial sales type modes, and it just doesn't feel right. So that's not how I want to spend my time. And I've been getting into keynote speaking for the past 2 years. So I've doubled down on speaking in the past couple of months. And it's so true. Like, where your energy goes, what is it? Where your energy goes, something flows.
Where
I'm
your
not
attention goes, your
Energy
energy flows.
flows. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you for that. Yeah, where your attention, and that, that's a very much like a 3D type saying that we all say, but then once we get into like quantum physics and the subconscious mind of thoughts and feelings creating your reality, it's like, oh yeah, no wonder why. So going back to like pop culture and movies, even like looking at some of our terms being like, oh, you might, to your point of like someone might not resonate with like human design or astrology. I mean, you say them. I've never thought about this before. It's just coming out now, right? Well, do you believe in the phrase where you put your energy, where you put your attention, your energy flows there? Well, yeah. Well, why don't you believe in quantum physics that your outer world is a reflection of your inner world? Like
Mhm.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing, right? So, anyways, though, yeah, but the speaking business is growing. I'd like to say I play on two sides of the fence. One is speaking, where the largest stage I've spoken on yet is had 700 people in the audience. Most of them were wearing suits and ties. Like, I'm not like saying they are all wearing suits and ties, but that's the type of attire. So very much corporate. And that's like Trojan horse, where it's like in the framework of like mental health in the workplace, but I'm like weaving in spiritual and mindful practices and topics. And a lot of people, that's going to be the thing that like plants that seed, and then they find their mentor on their hero's journey. And then the other side is doing the deep medicine work, in person medicine work, and integration coaching and guiding, where it's like so much deeper. So it's really nice to have both of those outlets, because like the corporate, I can feel good about making money there because it's almost like Robin Hood, whatever, when it's
Mhm.
coming from a corporation. What we all have different money stories, and they're going to, someone's personal, like, hey, can you pay me this, because I know what my worth is, and I know I can sell you on this because I'm good at sales. But now that doesn't feel good, like, so that's a little bit tricky. So as I build all of this out, like, my plan is to go deeper and deeper with corporate. So I'm making enough money with corporate and cracking people open, so like it's helping them. And my mission is to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, because in corporate there's just this massive hustle culture. So it's
Mhm.
very much like in alignment with my heart and what I want to do, and then feeding my soul, where hopefully I can get to a point where it's more like pro bono when I'm doing coaching. So I can still like help people one-on-one or in a group program, and not be like, oh, I need money from this,
Mhm.
so I'm in building phase right now. And this goes to more things being like, all right, well, 2 years in my first business, the first 3 to 5 years, like, were filled of, am I doing the right thing? Should I just go get a job? So I just need to remind
Mhm.
myself, like, hey, 2 years in, give yourself a break. You did it once, you can do it before, all that type of stuff. But it's, some people hit lightning in a bottle for whatever their business is, and it just like is flourishing right off the bat. Right now I'm in growth mode, and I'm seeing that I am growing. So that's exciting. But also being mindful of the stories, being like, hey, why not me to,
Yeah.
just hit that lightning in the bottle. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
And so, talking about psychedelics, and I know you have a book on Kindle that is free. Why is it going? About various psychedelics and what they're good for and what they're not good for, which I really love. I love that manual. Very, very helpful. What is your favorite psychedelic tool?
Mm.
Do you have one?
It's hard to say. I mean, I want to say ayahuasca because it feels
Mhm.
like my first love, but I haven't sat with the medicine for a few years, and now it's like it's hard to say. I think if I don't know, I'm not really in like the psychedelic space this year too much. Mushrooms, like it, I still get so much anxiety with mushrooms.
Mhm.
Like I need to go into a mushroom ceremony to really like go deep with mushrooms. I can't be like, oh, let's go on a hike and do
Yeah.
mushrooms. I love microdosing. And then Bufo, for obvious reasons, working with Bufo so much as well. And I mean, I don't know that I really have a favorite, but if I had to choose one, I'd probably say ayahuasca because it's like my first love, and that type of thing. And the medicine's been a little bit difficult recently, and I've been putting the intention to be called to that medicine for better part of a year now, and it just hasn't lined up. So I'm just like, all right, but yeah, I'm in a place of integration. Last year, Bufo really helped me a lot, and I'm super
Mhm.
grateful for that medicine.
I know. For me, Bufo definitely was the most favorite one because it was the easiest. Ayahuasca was really hard. I did
Oh,
it a couple of times. It was so intense. Mushrooms the same. I still I do not know how people can enjoy it in any way. For me, it's such a deep,
which one?
profound work.
Mushrooms?
Mushrooms,
Okay.
yeah. LSD was also so difficult, incredibly difficult. But with Bufo, I just went in and went out, and I don't remember what was in between. Although I'm curious, like how did it look like from outside? But I'm so happy that my ego was not aware of any of the pain and like difficult process that you experience with any other psychedelics. Do you have the same
Totally.
experience
Is
with
that the
Bufo?
same experience for everybody with Bufo,
That's
or
a
is
yeah.
that
Is it no?
No, no,
no?
it's different for everyone. We could call it like different archetypes,
Okay.
and it sounds like we're pretty similar. It's funny. I have a few friends where they'll come out here to my house in Santa Cruz. I'm about less than a 10-minute walk to the beach, and we'll have like a mushroom day where we put intention to it and just like do different things, some breath work, like ocean plunge, go in a hot tub, chill, whatever. And the two friends that I usually do it with, both of them just go straight to Blissland. Meanwhile, like I go straight to shadow work, and I'm like, I need to do some breath work right now.
Oh,
It's like I'm so envious of my friends that go straight to Blissland. I'm like, why every time it goes straight to shadow work?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm totally envious about that for sure.
yeah. Bufo, though, it's different for everyone. It's we work with threshold doses, meaning we do higher amounts so that the ego
Mhm.
can go offline, and it works with the default mode network to create new neural pathways. And it's a great way to, release that stored trauma in the body or that story, whatever it is. And the energy is moving that can manifest within the ceremony, looking different ways for different people. It doesn't really matter as much like what's happening in the ceremony or like what you did or anything like that. It's cliche to say that 90% of the work is in the integration, but
Mhm.
I find with Bufo more than any other medicine I've personally worked with, it's entirely true because with ayahuasca, typically I'll get like a roadmap or mushrooms
Mhm.
even, I'll be able to navigate and be like, oh, okay, here are my next steps. So then I go and do that. So 90% is like the integration. It's like, cool, yeah, that makes sense. But then with Bufo, the lessons start to unfold in the integration more so for me
Yeah.
than other medicines, which is why for me that's really about you know the integration. The other side of Bufo too is like people don't talk about the negative side of manifesting. Bufo very much is an experience of like, oh wow, I am constantly creating my reality
Mhm.
through my thoughts and feelings. So why sometimes people, my feeling at least, is why they will have a harder time in integrating Bufo is because they are subconsciously not aware of their thoughts and feelings, and they're very much caught in a victim mentality.
Mhm.
Not everyone, but it's going to be something to that degree where it's like it becomes a self-perpetuating feedback loop where it's being mirrored back to you more and more and more. And then typically people will finally get to a place for themselves where they feel that to be true, and somehow they make a shift. But there's nothing I can say, there's nothing either of you can say or anyone else can say. The person always needs to get to that conclusion for themselves, so that it's felt and it becomes gnosis. And at that point in time, that's when they actually are able to have transformation, which is why we're just guides, doing our
Yep.
best to give them the tools. But, if there was a better secret to do it, it would be out there and we would all be doing it. And which is why we work with these medicines, because it is like a secret that we've unlocked, yet there's a lot of work to it. And the mindset shift isn't just like a snap of the fingers. It takes work too.
But what would you recommend for somebody who's just starting and looking into psychedelic treatment? What would be the medicine to start with? Or is it like what you called to? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really like so unique to each individual. We see people working with Bufo where they've never done a psychedelic or even smoked weed before and have great experiences sometimes, a lot of times. And it's because of what you said before, where it's like, oh, I don't want to sit through like a 6-hour ayahuasca ceremony. It metabolizes so quickly. So sometimes going straight to the top, it works for some people. I think for me personally, having done microdosing with psilocybin for a year prior to ayahuasca was really helpful. I mean, I had plenty of mushroom journeys in my youth, but I'd never had like a proper medicine ceremony. For me as well, I think ayahuasca was perfect. I don't know that Bufa would have been the answer for me for the first one. Everyone's different. So it is very much called, I'm all about this message of soul life balance, which is a blend of yin and yang. And the soul side of that equation would be like, okay, being called. But that's where we can go like too deep of being like, oh, I'm just being called and not really being grounded, like actually looking at the pros and cons. So the life side of soul life balance would be like looking at the pros and cons. So I try to look at most things that I do, but especially a medicine ceremony from like a soul life balance perspective of being like, okay, is there a balance of each of these, or am I being a little bit more in one of the areas than the others? That said, like typically a good rule of thumb when you're looking to do some sort of medicine ceremony is to put the intention out there. And I always like to say, like, if we need to approach it like we would a vacation, where I know for me, if I'm traveling, like right now, I've had 2 tabs open on my computer for the past three days to book a flight, right? And I need to look at hotels and all this. Like, I need to do all this research. If you're feeling you have that type of energy, like the masculine to like, let me Google this and then look and then compare and contrast, and like there's no flow to it, then like maybe you shouldn't do it. Like if there's a good blending, then like, okay, yeah. And it's a felt thing and you'll know.
Yeah, I do agree that, like, and I do recommend that usually to my clients who are just starting something to start with microdosing psilocybin. I feel that it's like a door opening, like your brain starts to peek through, and that fear of psychedelics in general, they sort of like dissipate when you know how it feels like to have psilocybin in your body. And then most of them then move on to the larger dose or different medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly what it felt like for me. It was
Yeah,
like the microdose opened up the little gateway, so it's the other stuff isn't so scary anymore.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And you talk about the importance of integration, which we both completely agree with. Like the integration part is such a huge part of it. Do you have a favorite tool that
Mm.
helps with integration?
Mine is breathwork,
Yeah.
straight up. Yeah.
Hmm. And yeah, I agree. And a lot of people like, oh, we're just going to take the medicine and have the healing ourselves, and they don't understand how much of importance of the guide and the person who takes them through that. Like you need that help. The majority of work is in that help. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm sure you're going to agree with that statement that
Yep.
all of us need that support. I was just like, I was driving back from Coachella, and I was so sick on the way back,
Mm.
and I couldn't even ground myself. And I'm like, I need somebody. So sometimes you just need people around you who can give you that support. And it's very important to have like a coach or shaman or guide who can guide you through all those processes in your life for sure. Like have a good team.
Yeah, have a good team.
So we'd love to ask what lights you up right now in your life. It can be in your work or in your life or both. What is something that is lighting you up right now?
I'm so stoked to finally have my book out there. And I think that's part of the reason why I've been like tossing and turning these past 4 to 8 weeks, because I've just been in limbo and like with the editor or just different things that need to get finalized, and doing a Kickstarter as well. And the book's going to come out in the next few weeks. And this 6-step breath process, like I get fired up when I teach it, when I talk about it, when I practice it for myself. And I just feel like, okay, like I just want the book to be out already. It's just like this limbo space. And
Yeah.
the Kickstarter ended up being a total disaster and not working out, which is another thing. Like not disaster, but like I put all this time and effort and intention into it. And I'm barely going to meet my goal of $1,000. I thought for sure I'd be able to bring in like 2,500 minimum, maybe 5K up to like 10, 20, and offset a lot of the costs I've endured these past few years. And it's like, nope, not really. So now the Kickstarter being a month long, it's been like, okay, can we just get this over with? Which is not the energy we want to have with anything. But I am so excited about the book because, like I said, like this book, a lot of it was just channeled through me. I've wrote it based off my own experience and helping with other people. And I have 5 speaking gigs lined up in May, which is just in a few weeks. So I'm super stoked to get back on stages because I've only spoke on a few stages so far this year, and speaking on stages really lights me up, and it's so invigorating, and the travel and the whole thing. So stoked on that.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
And the book comes out in May. So in a few weeks, we're not sure
Yeah.
of the date yet.
Do you
Yeah.
know the date?
It's hard to say exact date, but it'll be early to mid-May.
Yeah, but I'm super excited. I cannot wait to check it out for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
And would also love to ask if you have any advice or guidance or like a little nugget for listeners on something to help navigate the human experience.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think zoom out, remember the infinity, the highs and lows, and we're always come back to meet ourselves exactly where we're at. And when we're able to zoom out on that, get curious and get excited, adopt a game time mentality. That's what helps me.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. I was so happy I got you here on the podcast, and it seems it's shaping out to be a great episode. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let our listeners know where they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, samkabert.com, SAM, last name Kabert, KAB as in boy, ERT, samkabert.com.
Beautiful.
Awesome. And we'll leave all of that in the description.
Thank you so much for joining us and connecting with us today. It's been a joy to interview you and learn more about your story.
I've had fun too. Thank you both, and keep showing up and doing the good work that you're doing. And such bright lights, not just because you're wearing white and you have a white background behind you, but I love it.
We matched our outfits today, all three of us.
I know, that's so true. And this is like a very exclusive episode because usually she's in Canada and I'm in LA, and we're like doing it both on Zoom and the guest is present. But today we are present both in the same location. So it's very unique. Once again, Sam, thank you so much for being here with us. And we really hope to have you back soon with all the new things that you're coming up with. And for our listeners, thank you for listening to our podcast. And if you feel that this episode was interesting and useful, please share it with anyone who might benefit from it. Till next time.